Have you ever wondered how many different types of diseases are actually present? What disease can do is disease can invade your body and actually make a person ill. Well, what happens is not every time when disease enters or basically invader enter your body, you get sick every time, because sometimes white blood cells win the fight against the invaders, which are the diseases that go inside your body. And sometimes, not every single time, white blood cells lose against the diseases. So sometimes whenever they lose, you get ill. So how many types of diseases are actually there? Well, the first type of disease is known as infectious disease, and the second type is non-infectious disease. Now you may have wondered, I've learned polio, flu, all this different kind of disease you will list in on your list. Well, these types of diseases can be categorized in infectious and non-infectious diseases. For example, polio and flu and rest of them, which can be carried on or passed on from one person to another person, are known as infectious disease. Now flu, like we say, if I have flu and the person next to me doesn't have, well, I can give him the flu, okay? With direct contact or indirect contact. So what is the difference between infectious disease and non-infectious disease? We already know that infectious disease can be passed on from one to another. So difference is that between both of them, one can be passed on on to another person and other cannot. Like non-infectious disease, it's a disease, types of diseases that that only you have it. You cannot pass it on to someone else. Like smokers, whenever they get heart problems or lung problems, they cannot pass it to the person next to them. Okay? So this cannot be passed on from one person to another, while infectious disease can. So now what we'll do is basically talk about different types of diseases. And diseases are basically categorized in 5 different categories. Now the whole overall is known as, the category is known as pathogens. So whenever you hear the word pathogens, there are 5 different types of diseases that can make a human ill. Now let's go ahead and talk about the 5 different types of diseases. So the first type is bacterial. Second is fungi. Third, Protozoa. Fourth, last one, bacteria, fungi. These are the 5 different types of diseases, and yet these are known to be pathogens. So whenever someone is using the word pathogens, pathogens can consist of 5 different types of diseases that, now remember, these are not the actual how many different types of diseases are there. We know there are only 2, infectious and non-infectious. This all things come in that category. So bacteria, fungi, protozoa, parasites, and viruses come in the category of pathogen. And pathogen is are different types of diseases, different types that can make a person ill. Now you ask yourself, have you ever made someone ill? Or do you know that? Well, if you know that, it's a virus, it's a flu, which is an infectious disease that if you have it, you can be passed on to another. Now we'll talk about more on pathogens. Okay, so now here we only know that a disease can be spread directly or indirectly, right? Now there are actually more than 2 ways on how a disease can be spread based upon the pathogens right here. Now, talking about pathogens, you see the diseases right here, which are bacteria, fungi, and so on and so forth. But these pathogens are there to make you sick but they must get into your body as their first step. Okay? It's not like you just sneeze on some other person and boom, he's sick. Well, what happens is there's a long procedure, and as you know, if white blood cells fail to fight against the pathogens that I've thrown on someone else, spit on someone else's body, then they might get the disease. So it can be direct or indirect, as we know, indirect contact. But now we will discuss about pathogen that spread indirectly or directly. So pathogen that spread by direct contact are those that require the infected person or animal to physical touch as a healthy person. Now rabies, for example, is transferred when an infected animal bites a healthy animal. HIV is transmitted through the exchange of body fluids, such as during sexual intercourse or sharing of infected needles, in which you plug in the needles. There are different types of needles, you can't even name them. So it can also be transmitted from a mother to her child through the placenta or breast milk. So these things are direct contact that we just talked about. Now let's go ahead and talk about an indirect contact. Now pathogens that are spread by indirect contact can survive on non-living thing surfaces, such as tables, doorknobs, the kitchen sponges. Some parasitic worms, larvae, live in the soil and can burrow through the skin of someone victims barefoot, and once they are inside the body, the larva travels to the victim's intestine. Now species that remain in intestine throughout the life cycle can cause discomfort, nausea, and diarrhea. So other pathogens, like we said, these are not only two types of pathogens that can make a person ill by direct contact or indirect contact. Now there's more ways. So other pathogens are spread through air. So air, we talked about, let me go ahead and list them because it's rather an important concept. So first we say pathogens can be spread by direct contact, indirect contact. Air is what we are going to talk about. So when you cough or sneeze, you might release droplets into air around you. When you are sick, these droplets might contain pathogens, the different types of pathogens that we listed before. Now other airborne diseases or airborne pathogens are lightweight and hardly enough that can survive in the air or dry places. So respiratory diseases such as tuberculosis and SARS are examples of airborne diseases. These diseases can be spread by air, only air, such as tuberculosis and SARS. So still, other pathogens can be spread by vectors. And we'll discuss what a vector basically means in the term of biology, because in mathematics it means something else, in physics it means something else. Now in biology, a vector is anything that carries a pathogen and transmit it into healthy cells. So for example, insects are the example of vectors. Insects can transmit bacteria, viruses, and protozoa. Now notice that these are three different types of one pathogen. Okay? Now the black death is caused by a bacterium that lives in a stomach of rat's flea. People get sick with the black death when they were bitten or by a contaminated flea. Mosquitoes can also pass diseases between animals. The protozoan that causes malaria, for example, let's take an example, completes a part of its life cycle in a gut of a mosquito. So mosquitoes can also transmit disease between species. We talked about 4 different types of ways in which a disease can be, a pathogen can be passed on in order to make a person ill. Now you might think there's only 4 different ways on how a pathogen can be passed on. Well, if you say that, you're incorrect. There's 5 ways in which pathogens can be passed on. And the 5th one is rather peculiar because it can be passed on by food. Okay, now how? Well, pathogens can be passed on by food or transmitted through food. Some diseases are caused by pathogens that were alive when the food animal lived. Now, mad cow disease, which causes neurological problems in humans, is caused by an abnormal protein that is found in some beef cattle. Okay? Now, other diseases such as various types of food poisoning are caused by bacteria or fungi that decomposes food. So don't mistake the food that food can cause. For example, we said mad cow disease. But if you have something that is made food poisoning or something like that, these are all different types of diseases that can be transmitted from the food to the human body, because when the food is gone inside, there is no way the white blood cell is going to directly defend off the invaders directly, because it's already inside your body when you put in. So food would be the dangerous diseases that can be passed on, and whenever this thing happens, it happens quickly. Okay, rather this procedure takes a while, okay, takes some time, while this can happen in less amount of time compared to this one, because these things can take time to get inside your body, while the food diseases are already inside. Thanks for watching.